For today's webinar, Urban Voices Amplified, Empowering Native Vote. My name is Chelsea Gutierrez, and I'm the Public Policy Associate here at NCUIH. If you could, please place your name, UIO, and title into the chat below. I would like to give a brief background on NCUIH for those who may not know who we are or be familiar with the work we do. We are a national nonprofit organization devoted to the support and development of quality, accessible, and culturally competent health and public health services that help to serve American Indians and Alaska Natives living in urban areas. We advocate for the 41 urban Indian organizations receiving grants from the Indian Health Service pursuant to the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, and strive to improve the health of the over 70% of Native population that live in urban areas. And before we begin, I want to cover some housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and made available for public viewing. All mics have been muted, and if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or we will have time set aside for an open Q&A. And this is our agenda for the presentation. We are joined by Rio from the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, as well as presenters from 2 of our UIOs. And at the end of the presentation, like I said, we will have time set aside for any questions. And before we get into the presentation, I want to highlight this grant opportunity provided by Vote ER through their Community Civic Engagement Program. We encourage UIOs to learn more about the program and apply at the link provided. We also wanted to share this opportunity supported by the CDC and available to all UIO staff, so that link will also be in the chat as well.
See if it works.
And lastly, I want to thank NUIFC, who has provided this grant.
I can hear.
Indigenous.
I'm assuming then the mic's working, right?
Democracy's Indigenous Urban Indian Civic and Voter Engagement Initiative, which has allowed us to assist 2 of our UIOs by providing funding so they can continue voter engagement activities in their communities.
People on the call.
And we are lucky to have.
And I'm presenting.
Hi, Susan. I think you're unmuted.
There we go.
Thank you. We are lucky to have Rio from NUIFC here today, so I will introduce him and allow him to provide some more information about the work they do. After receiving his degree in communications from Washington State University's illustrious Murrow College, he set to work learning about the power of storytelling, working as a journalist, organizer, and digital communications specialist in both the government and nonprofit field. He honed his skills at taking large problems and breaking them down into understandable and actionable steps. He views himself as both a communicator and an organizer, with a belief that the only way to cause foundational change for society, and the Indian community in particular, is to seize control of the narrative and build coalitions capable of toppling power structures. It's this belief that has drawn him to the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. So I will let Rio present on his slides.
Hi, thanks so much for the introduction, Chelsea, and thank you guys, everyone at NCUIH, for having me. We're so excited to talk a little bit about the National Urban Indian Family Coalition's Democracy's Indigenous initiative, which is sort of our flagship civic engagement initiative. I'll go over into a lot more detail about what it is and kind of what we aim to get out of it and what, why we think it's really important. But broad strokes, it's about harnessing the civic and voter power of the urban Native nonprofit sector. Next slide. So a little bit about the NUIFC. We were founded in 2003. So we were actually just last year celebrated our 20th year anniversary. Had a little celebration in Las Vegas. We brought all the orgs out and did a big party. It was really fun, a big gala about, what is the NUIFC, what the work that we've all been doing and stuff like that. But the creation of the NUIFC came from our executive director, Janine Comino, who had been working in our urban Native nonprofit for most of her life and kind of looked around and realized that there was a lack of resources, conversation, and focus on the urban Native community in particular, which she and so many others that she worked with were a part of. And so she also knew that there were a whole host of urban Indian nonprofits in different cities around the country, but that each one of these organizations kind of operated away from one another. There wasn't a dedicated amount of time or resources or platform to have these organizations talk to one another, work together on the same issues, and really start thinking about how do we take steps forward to not just meet issues, but begin to change, to build power, to really change kind of the perception around urban Native voters. And that was what led to the NUIFC, which is now a network of over 40 urban Indian nonprofits across the country. I believe we are in 27 states. But we are obviously very excited about that and everything that we've been able to accomplish. Next slide. So one of the biggest reasons the NUIFC was created is the simple fact that more than 70% of Native people live off reservation, but so much conversation about Native communities, about supporting Native families, supporting Native people is so often kind of thought about in relationship to dedicated tribal governments or related to just reservation communities, which we know for a fact is not where the majority of Native people are. Even well-intentioned individuals kind of have this issue of not really having a full grasp of the diaspora or of how urban Native communities work together. So we have a couple stats that we like sharing. I'm sure everyone on here is really familiar with, but the main reason the NUIFC exists and our main thing around messaging and talking is about making sure that people can understand how the urban Native population really, is the largest majority of Native people, and how if there is a goal or a focus on helping and uplifting Native people, then there needs to be dedicated time and resource and thought about the urban Native community. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Next slide. Oh, shoot. Okay. No worries. So this is our 2020 census, statistically significant. This is something that we are very proud of. I'll jump into this before we jump into our kind of digital equity or our civic engagement work. So in 2020, we did a lot of dedicated work around the census, which helped kind of increase awareness around that and help people in the Native community, understand what the census is and how to be involved in it. This was a lot of our organization's first times jumping into the census, and was really something that we were able to make a really big impact in. This was again 2020, and it's something that we're still working on today. A lot of our organizations are dedicated to working around the American Community Survey, which is a supplemental survey that's going on along with the census. But that was a really big focus for us, as we were really focused on trying to make sure these organizations were aware of it, and the community was really aware of it, why it was important, and making sure they were aware of how to complete the census. Next slide. So the very first Democracies Indigenous, this is actually before Democracies Indigenous was what we referred to it as, but the NUIFC stepped into the civic engagement space for the first time in 2018 when we received about $500,000, I think in like late September. So the reason I bring that up is because it's often talked about by Janine and some of the other people, this is before I got there, as the 6-week miracle. This is something Sue Van and Janine Komen, our executive director, Sue Van being a individual at Coulter Foundation, reached out to Janine and said, how do we help these organizations? And there wasn't a lot of time before the election, but because of our organization and the network and kind of the kind of ability these orgs have to take a project and run with it, they were able to, in this short period of time in 2018, immediately take funding and connect with over 70,000 people at events and different outreach efforts, and connect with nearly 7 million individuals across social media channels. This ended up being a massive election. This is the one in which Sharice Davids, Deb Haaland, and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, all Native women, were elected to their respective offices. And it was something that we were all very proud of. Each one of those individuals were individuals that our organizations worked really hard to support and uplift. So we were really excited about that. And it was obviously a very big election. Next slide. Cool. We also have, this is our off year. So one of the biggest things the NUIFC has been focusing on for a while now is focusing on and working about off-year work. So one of our biggest focuses is how do we make sure our civic engagement work is something that is building year-round, regardless of around an election. One of the things we have always heard from our organizations and from community organizers is that so much of the standard civic engagement infrastructure that is built around this idea of, there is 4 weeks before the election, there is a month before the election, can we count on your vote? And then never showing up again until the next election and the next time to ask for your vote. That usually leaves people feel as if the voting process is very transactional, like there's very little actual connection to any of this. So to combat that, we have launched in our off-year work our Thriving Cities initiative. This is focused on allowing organizations in their community to connect with elected officials, to connect with community leaders in legislative session. So to really kind of help our organizations and people in positions of power learn about the urban Native community, but also how they can be supporting us in actual legislative work and actual policy work to make sure that the work that we are doing during election year is impactful and kind of connect that through line of what voting is all about, and then also kind of how it tangibly makes an impact in your community. So the Thriving Cities initiative brings elected officials to town halls, community events, different things like that during the elections. Sorry about that. Which is something that we've been very proud of for a while now. And that is a big step of what we are wanting to do. And it really focuses on that idea of tying, this is electoral work, connecting that to actual civic engagement work. Slide. Cool. This is the 2020 Native Vote, Our Democracy is Indigenous. This is the most modern version and probably the biggest initiative that we had since this was for the presidential election, and is sort of the best parallel to what we are doing now in 2024. So in 2020, we connected with 24 urban Indian nonprofits in 17 states to talk about democracy is indigenous, to help people get registered to vote, to learn everything they could. This is obviously on top of the COVID-19 pandemic, so helping people learn how they could register to vote safely, how they could cast their ballot, either by mail and early voting. We created handouts, t-shirts, swag, and helped connect with over 16 million people, total media engagements, connected with 77,000 participants at digital democracy is indigenous events, and had over 300 in-person COVID-19 safe events. That was our biggest effort that we had done before, and it's something that we are deeply proud of. I think really highlighted what the democracy is indigenous cohort is all about, and we were really proud of all that work. Next slide. The last election cycle that we have done before this one that we are stepping into was 2022. Similar model that we followed. We built on a lot of the success that we had in 2018 and 2020, handout, merchandise, coordinating messages. We really focus on expanding in-person organizing this cycle, since COVID-19 had been or was in a much more manageable position at that time. And we really thought a lot, this is when we really started talking a lot about how do we make sure our electoral work is something that is long lasting and is building all throughout the year, not just right before the election. So that was the 2022 midterms, and we were also deeply proud of how all of that turned out as well. Next slide. Great. One thing I wanted to mention, the NUIFC, I can put this in the link as well. We just released last year, at the end of last year, our 5-year impact report. So that highlights all of the growth and success of the Democracy is Initiative. The Democracy is Indigenous initiative, features stories and recaps of all of our electoral work, including some of the organizational highlights, the Phoenix Indian Center, Las Vegas Indian Center. They all did some really creative and amazing things, and we captured all of that and put it into our 5-year report, as well as this combined 5-year impact that I really wanted to touch on. So in the 5 years since the Democracy is Indigenous / Civic Engagement Initiative has been created, we have had nearly 500,000 in-person interactions, connected with nearly 33 million people in social, print, and other media, hosted 683 civic engagement-based events, and registered over 60,000 new voters, which is something that we are really proud of. I will drop a link in there if you want to learn more about, the extent of the last 5 years the NUIFC has accomplished. Next slide. Yes. And then finally, that brings us to 2024. So democracy is indigenous once again. Below on the left, you can see our newest handout artwork that we're going to be using. Each one of these handouts is customized to each individual state, sent with a QR code, as well as information about election deadlines, how to register to vote, where you need to register to vote, what you need to bring to your ballot, essentially a breakdown of everything you need to know about how to vote in your community. We are also sending them with the ballot box design that you see in the center. We are also sending different marketing materials, posters, t-shirts, chapstick, microfiber cloth, everything we can get our hands on that we can think that would be helpful to our organizations, as well as obviously funding them just for outright civic engagement work. And one of the biggest things about the NUIFC and the Democracy is Indigenous work is that we like to bring our organizations together for a chance to work with one another and to learn from one another. So we will be having another in-person cohort gathering here in May, where all of our organizations from around the country will join together to talk with one another, share what they've been working on, and figure out how we can best coordinate and support one another, as well as we're going to be kind of building on that, a few more unified days of action. This year is actually the 100th year anniversary of the Indian Citizenship Act, and we are planning on making a really big blowout event for that sometime in the near future. So we'll hopefully have more information about that and are really going to focus on that during our in-person cohort gathering. But I mean, the same thing about Democracy is Indigenous is true throughout these last couple of election cycles, which is we really focus on what we know to be successful, and the ones that know what is to be successful are the organizations that we are funding. NCUIH, for example, knows what is the best way to work with the UIOs. These individual nonprofits are the leaders in the community, and so we really believe in empowering them and supporting them however we can. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rio, for that background on NUIFC. It's great to see all the work you guys have done over the years. And before we move on, I want to take a moment to discuss the intersection of health and civic engagement for Native communities. So in 2022, the American Medical Association passed a resolution where they identified voting as being a social determinant of health. Social determinants of health are non-medical factors that influence health outcomes, often the conditions or systems that shape the conditions of daily life. Examples of this can include economic stability and education access. The AMA also identified that more voting is associated with better health outcomes. This is supported by research where it's noted that health disparities create gaps in voter participation, which then influences biased health policy and reinforces those same health disparities that prevent people from voting. As shown through this graphic, you can see the inability to participate in voting creates a cycle. When there is lower participation in voting, it leads to a lack of political representation, which then allows for policies that don't prioritize marginalized populations, resulting in the continued outcome of poor health. And in 2022, the Native American Rights Fund touched on the necessity for increased access to voting, primarily through making voter registration more accessible. One of these recommendations was to provide National Voter Registration Act designation to IHS facilities, an idea with wide support throughout Indian country, and even resulted in passage of a resolution by NCAI. NARF noted that by allowing facilities to receive this NVRA designation, they can use their reach and role within Indian country to move us closer to a democracy where all communities are valued and thrive. And President Biden has taken steps to recognize and address the lack of access, community space to not just voting, but registering to vote. On March 7, 2021, he signed an executive order on promoting access to voting, which created the Native American Voting Rights Steering Group. He then built upon that by announcing on March 5, 2023, that agencies will take steps to make voting more accessible. This included a pilot program through IHS to make 5 different facilities NVRA designated sites by the end of 2023. Today, we are lucky to hear from Susan at Native Health, which was the first facility to receive this designation. And as you can see here, Vice President Harris even tweeted about this achievement. The National Voter Registration Act is what allows this designation to occur, as it gives states the power to designate organizations as a voter registration agency. This is done because states are required to designate other offices, which can include non-governmental offices. The designation allows for voter registration services to be provided that are comparable to those provided at the DMV or Medicaid offices. With that background in mind, I'd like to briefly touch on the work that NCUIH has done related to voter engagement. Here we have some of our graphics that are available for download on our website. Feel free to use them to post on social media or use the poster download to print a poster for your clinic. We have also written blogs about the Voting Rights Act and Native Health's NVRA designation. All of these items are available through the QR code or at the link which will be provided in the chat. Now we will have our presenters from our UIOs, which we are very lucky to have. And we will start with Raylan from Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake. She will present and discuss on the recent voter engagement activities. So Raylan Montoya, a member of the Dene Nation, holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Health Promotion and Education from the University of Utah with a focus on community health. She has been with the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake since February 2020 and is currently serving as the Public Relations and Marketing Specialist, where she is dedicated to serving the people and effecting meaningful change within her community, all while fostering strong relationships. So I will give it away to Raylan.
Hi, once again, my name is Raylan. I'm just going to introduce myself in my language. Yat Eshe Raylan Yanashiat Shihin Nishlakia Ani Bashti Bipatoni Dashche Kashchitni Dashnale. As Chelsea stated, I am Navajo from Gallup, New Mexico, but I reside here in Salt Lake City, Utah from Navajo Nation. And I am from the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake. Next slide. So for Get Out the Vote for me, I feel like for me, I like to use it as education, and that is educating the importance of voting and then bringing awareness to voting and our rights as people that can vote, and then also empowering the community to have a voice in any elections that are coming, but then also for any community events, community voting. Everybody's voice is important and that it is very empowering. So some of the outreach things that I did, I was able to do speaking engagements at different powwows, at different conferences, and then I was able to have outreach tables at many different same places, at different powwows, at different community events, at our own UICSL events. And then I did a lot of media campaigns for Utah because last year's 2023, we actually had a Utah election here. And so we were able to push out a lot of media campaigns. Next slide. Here's some of our photos from the events. As you can see, we have our outreach table at one of our back to school health fair events, which is one of our biggest events here at UICSL. One of our hit items was actually our light up fans. As you can see in the bottom corner, it actually starts saying democracy and then it goes away and then it'll come back and it'll say is Indigenous. These were a huge hit because at our outreach tables where we had them, people were like, oh man, what is this? And then we'd show them, they'd use them, and then they would leave the table and then eventually they'd pay attention to the lighting. And as they were paying attention to the lighting, they'd come back and they'd be like, what does this mean? And that's where like, well, let's tell you about it. And so we'd sit there and we'd tell them the whole story about why democracy is Indigenous and why what elections were coming up and then what our campaign was about. And it was really nice because as they were starting to use it, they would actually go to their friends or they would go back to the powwow. And then that would bring more people coming in. And so we would actually run out of these at every event that we had, and we had to continually purchase more and more and more. We also had a lot of notices on our social media pages about how to register to vote, any deadlines that played into our social media campaigns. Next slide. And then from there, sorry. Because we had our elections last year in November here in Utah, we had to find a way to quickly come out with a campaign that we could reach across Utah. And so with that, we started to create campaign videos. And so this is our first one. It's called Native Voices Matter, Your Vote Matters. Awesome. And then as we were starting to do this, so we released this in early November, just to remind people, hey, it's time to vote if you're doing mail-in ballots and stuff. But then we actually had another video, which is going to be on the next slide. And this is our dance to the polls vote. And this was a very powerful video. So if you want to play. And so this video actually had a really big impact on our community because it had history. It, it said 33 years after the Snyder Act, 87 years after the 15th Amendment. And a lot of people don't know that, and that Utah was one of the last states to allow Native Americans to vote in their elections. And so this video strikes, I mean, for me, it was really awesome to see. It was great to see so many people share it through all of our media channels. I took this video, both of these videos, and I found a streaming platform that actually would stream it across 500 different channels of live TV, but then also all of your streaming channels like Paramount and TNT. Everybody has their own thing, Netflix. And it was really nice, which goes into my next slide, which is going to be my success story. My boss here, the director of administrative services, attended a conference out in NCUIH, and there he ended up meeting Deb Holland, the Secretary of Interior, and an enrolled member of the Laguna Pueblo tribe. He ended up meeting her, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake." And she's like, "Oh, you guys are the ones with the video." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's just like, she's like, "I saw your video about going to vote." And he's like, "That just came out like last week." So it was pretty cool. He called me later and was like, "Hey, your video's getting recognition across more than Utah." And, like, it was really neat. I felt like the work that I was doing it mattered to the point where people were sharing it, because I only was sharing it with Utah. I wasn't sharing it outside of Utah, but because it had such an impact and it told such a strong story, it actually was being shared across multiple states. Next slide. Some of the lessons I learned is that for us, for the Native community, there's not very much that we can connect to. There's not things that are really marketed towards us. And so having something out there that is that makes that Native connection has a deep impact on our community. And so for me, I really have to be able to think outside of the box. I have to be able to have the time to create things, like this talked about the election day here in Utah, Tuesday, November 21st. Like, there's a lot of notices out there that say this is election day and stuff like that. But if it doesn't make that Native connection to our community, it's not really going to make an impact on our community. And so I really have to take the time to make it meaningful. Like this creation here, it says Native vote, democracy is Indigenous, your vote matters. But in the middle, it talks about how incredible we are and how great it is to be Indigenous. And that small little photo has a huge impact, and it makes people stop and like and share and tell others about the power that we hold within ourselves. And so that's why it is also important to make sure any of our campaigns are very specific. History, as you can see, that one about the dance to the polls, 1957, Utah allowed the first Native American vote, which was 33 years after the Snyder Act, 87 after the 15th Amendment. And that has a huge impact on my life, because my grandma, from what we think, back then they didn't have documentation, but she was born in 1936. So when she was able to vote, she wasn't able to vote. And so for me, I think about that, and that's why I choose to vote now. And that's why I really lean on educating our community about the importance of their voice. Next slide. Plans for the future. So we just barely got done with a collaboration with Navajo Nation. We were part of their resource fair out here in Salt Lake. It was really great. They're also having their elections coming up too. So I am making connections with them because as Native people, we're not only, we're able to vote in multiple elections for our tribe, but then also for the United States and our states and stuff like that. But many Natives don't know that. They believe that if they are registered for their tribe, they can't vote in another election. And so right now I'm really using the time to educate them through outreach tables stating, no, like this is the great part about being Native is that you actually get multiple voices all around. I have future collaborations set up with University of Utah, Cultural Fire Events, American Indian Services, Salt Lake Community College, Utah Valley University Powwow, and then Navajo Nation, as well as to get our messages out. We're able to connect with the executive team of President Boo Nygren of the Navajo Nation. And so this is also our 50th year anniversary here at the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake. And so we have a lot of things that are lined up to get more outreach opportunities there. And my goal, long-term goal, is to plan a Get Out the Vote event at UICSL for our 50th anniversary, and hopefully include Navajo Nation there as well. And then for other tribes, not that I'm trying to leave out other tribes, but some tribes you have to live on their on the reservation in order to vote, or you have to do it in person over there. So we're also looking at trying to bring in other tribes as well. But yeah. And then also outreach and collaborate. The 2024 presidential debate will be here in Utah at the University of Utah. So I'm trying to reach out to them, hoping I can have representation there, but then also have a outreach table at their event. But yes, those are goals right now. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raylan, for that presentation. I'm really great to see all the work you guys have been doing, and I'll speak for myself, but I know everybody else has already said that they love those videos, and I love seeing them and how much success those have brought you guys. And so next we'll have Susan Levy from Native Health speak, who will also discuss their voter engagement activities, but also how Native Health was able to receive NBRA designation. So Susan Levy is the Communications and Community Relations Director at Native Health. She has been at Native Health for over 18 years with over 25 years working in social service agencies. Susan has extensive experience in creating unique, innovative programs and community partnerships that address social determinants of health. She has created and implemented multiple successful programs, including Read It and Eat, Indigenous Young Chefs in the Kitchen, and Native Health's food programs. She is passionate about Native Health's programs and services, making a difference, and community collaborations, ensuring access to care. So I will pass it over to Susan.
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you, everybody, for your interest in amplifying the vote. So I'm from Native Health. Next slide. And so again, this is the Urban Voices Amplified Empowering Native Votes. And this is a picture of us at the Arizona State Capitol for Indian Nations and Tribal Legislative Day in January. Next slide. So Native Health is a federally qualified health center and also an urban Indian health program in Maricopa County, so in Phoenix, Arizona. And we are accredited by the AAAHC as a PCMH and then also HRSA. Next slide. And our mission is to provide accessible, holistic, patient-centered care to empower our community to achieve the highest quality health and well-being. And our vision is healthy people in healthy communities. Next slide. So we have 3 locations in the Metro Phoenix area. The top left is our central location, which is located in Central Phoenix. Our top right is the Mesa location, which is in a community east of our central location, about 20 miles. And the bottom photo is NHW Community Health Center, our west site, and that is about 10 miles northwest of our central location. Next site. So Chelsea had already mentioned what is the National Voter Registration Act, so an NVRA designation site. So as she already gave you all of the historical background to it, but what it is basically is it's anybody walking into our central location asking for services, we will ask them if they want to register to vote. That's kind of in a nutshell. So we have things set up that I'm going to show you some photos and kind of how we've done it. And it just says from our website, if you're not registered to vote where you live now, you can apply to register to vote here today. Your decision to register or not will not affect the services you are eligible to receive, nor the amount of assistance that you will be provided by Native Health. And so that is on our website. And then again, this is just at our central location. Next slide. So as Chelsea also mentioned, we are the first NVRA and IHS in the system, and also first in the state of Arizona. Next slide. So people always ask, how did we become an NVRA? So for all of you thinking about doing it, it's not that hard. I can help you. We'd love to assist you in anything. It's pretty easy. So the first thing we did is we had a previous relationship in working through the past many voter civic engagement cycles with the Secretary of State. So our Secretary of State had a tribal liaison that we worked pretty extensively with. And so we contacted them and said, hey, we're looking into becoming an NVRA. What do we need to do? So that was, we contacted them. Then we had a lot of discussions about the legalities, the contract, the process, the forms. It also involves the Department of Justice. So we had their attorneys get involved and everybody kind of got together and we chatted about what the process would look like, the paperwork, and kind of getting everybody together, make sure that we were following all the rules. Then we had a contract negotiation with the Secretary of State to make sure that, again, we were following all of the laws from the Secretary of State, the Maricopa County Registrar, Department of Justice, IHS, absolutely anybody that was at the table that needed to do that. Then the contract was signed, and then we received a proclamation from the Secretary of State. We also asked for a unique URL. So anytime anybody registers to vote using our unique URL, it's attributed to us, and we can pull the reports and see how many people are scanning it and how many people are registering. And then we did staff training by the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, and it's to be a deputy registrar. We held our second one yesterday. So our staff in the front line all take this class, and then they take the test, and then they're certified to become a deputy registrar. So we know that they're doing it correctly and they have the correct information. And then we've worked on our partnership with Maricopa County, the Arizona Secretary of State, Intertribal Council of Arizona, and the other partners involved. And we've worked with media extensively. As she mentioned, the Vice President had tweeted this. And then also it's been picked up by a lot of media sources across the country. And then the result has been increased voter registration. So next slide. So this is a picture of the proclamation that's sitting in our CEO's office. Next slide. And so what the process is for us for an NVRA, what it states is anybody requesting services. So we have a lot of supplemental programs at our central location. We have Department of Economic Security, we have legal, we have tax assistance, we have food. So it's strictly people asking to receive our services. We can help everybody, but that is the law. So when they check in at the front desk, they're handed a form that asks if they would or would not like to register to vote. They don't have to put their name, they just have to put yes or no, and then they sign it. And we by law have to keep all those forms for, I believe, 7 years. So if they are interested in registering to vote, they're assisted by our trained staff, and we have a kiosk We have the QR code, or we use paper, and we assist them if they would like assistance. Then all the completed forms are kept in a secure room and kept for Department of Justice or other review before they're sent to storage. Next slide. So as Chelsea mentioned, we do have patient enrollment specialists here, and they help people enroll in Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF. So they are already asking anybody in their office if they would like to register to vote. That's part of the state of Arizona, and they do that. So this is in addition to that. And this is just a picture of the flyer and the JPEG that we use to get the word out about connecting families to coverage. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have the unique URL on all of our papers. So it points to Service Arizona, which is where in Arizona they do their, they can do voter registration, their driver's license, and it's through the Arizona Secretary of State's office. They actually assigned us the unique URL to use. So the number of electronic registrations are tracked. The paper forms are turned into the Maricopa County Recorder's Office within 3 business days of them filling out the paperwork. And then I want to stress, no data is kept on any voter. In terms of the voter kiosk, we've disabled all cookies, so we absolutely have nothing on site. All we would know from the Secretary of State is how many voter registrations have been done electronically, and then Maricopa County would tell us how many have been done via paper. Next slide. So this is a picture of the lobby. You can see in the left photo, there's a kiosk underneath the television. And then there's signs posted everywhere that say, voter registration, register to vote, we can help you. The right photo is a picture on our table in the lobby. Our interns sit there, they're called Helping Hands. And then we have a free sticker box, and you can see the stickers are on the right. They're empty. We fill them every day, and we go through a tremendous amount of get out the vote stickers. So next slide. So again, we have a lot of signage. It looks different. We try to freshen it up, but we have it hung all over the lobby. And then the voter kiosk is in the middle. And you'll see the unique URL on the right-hand side. And that was a piece that we created with Olivia, who does a lot of our programs. And we have flyers and posters with that image on it and the QR code. Next slide. And this was Congressman Greg Stanton was at our site recently for another project. And he really liked the bracelets that we have and the flyers, and was just looking at them and took some with him. Next slide. So as Raylyn mentioned, we do a lot of similar things that they do. And I thought her videos were absolutely tremendous. Love those. We did do videos last election cycle. I like hers better. Last time we had a comedian, and we also had the fancy Navajo, but I might take some of Raylyn's ideas and maybe jump off and do some of ours. We also do outreach in our lobby and all events. So again, we go to powwows, we go to Native American parent meetings. We're going to be at the American Indian Disability Summit in a couple weeks. Any kind of markets. We're out generally right now, while it's nice weather, probably 5 different events per week. And we take all of this with us. Our staff, again, are trained in voter registration. So we pack up the stickers, the bracelets, the flyers, the fans, which you're going to see in a minute, and then our voter reg signs, and send them out into the community to register people. So the photo on the left was from, we hosted a dinner with the docs event, and we had about 80 students come, and we registered a lot of students that evening. That was for people interested in going to medical school. And the photo on the right was at, that one was at one of the high schools, I believe in Mesa. Next slide, please. So these are the bracelets that I keep alluding to. So that's like kind of like a la Taylor Swift. They say Native Vote on it. And again, this was at the Indian Nations and Tribal Legislative Day in January, where we unveiled these. And super popular. You can see like Phoenix Indian Center, their youth coalition was there, and they all took the bracelets. And that's just a screenshot of what they of the kids wearing the bracelets and what they liked. So next slide. And then here's some of the bracelets. Now on the right hand, so what you can't see in the photo is the QR code is like that bead in the middle where people can actually scan it and register to vote. And so that's what that is. One side is our logo, the icon, and then the other side is the QR code. And then it says Native Vote. We hand make all of these. All of us take them home and work on them nights and weekends. And we've made a lot. I know we have to make probably another 1,000, but we're working on it. Next slide. And these are a couple of pieces that we've created on this year's election cycle. So register to vote, how to register, and then again, both the unique URL via the QR code. Next slide. Again, more education, engagement, and social media. And again, so we've been putting this out, and this one's been very popular, similar to the other ones. People really, really like these. And so with the dates, and then here is, that's okay, next slide.
I love the one with the dates, Susan. It's so great.
Oh, thank you. And if anybody wants anything, we're more than happy to send you anything. I know our dates are different, but you could work with it.
Can we go back to that one for a sec?
Sure.
I don't know who's controlling on my team.
River, I think, yep.
Okay, thanks, River. Yeah, I just like that you put all of the important stuff that's coming up so that everyone knows, because everything is so different in all the different states.
Right. We also did a bookmark, and I don't know if that's in here as well. So the front is similar to this, and then on the back, it's the dates. We hand those out. We hand all of these out at every event and post them, and really trying to work hard about the importance of voting. And we have some other ideas. We're trying to come up with an earring idea also, but we're playing with that right now. Something different.
I love that. Thanks, River.
Okay, and then on the left, again, was another event that we were at. So you'll see at the table, you can see the free stickers. That's usually a really big, popular thing at the events, that people come over and they start asking us questions, and then we can encourage them and talk to them about the importance of registering to vote and things like that. The right-hand photo is our fans. So our fans are designed each election cycle by a different artist. And then we also have fans that we hand out at every event. Once a year, we change the design. So this is this year's voter registration fan. And again, it's the unique URL to the QR code. And again, it's all tracked. I get a report every Monday that says how many people scan that code. And I have an idea of what we're doing and where we're going if it's working. Next slide. So we have multiple sticker designs, and you can see the bracelet on the left is the newest sticker that we just got, so the Native Vote one. You can see on the flyers, we laid out some of the different designs that we've got. We also have the new fan sticker on the top right and the vote on the bottom right. What we also did is we posted on our social media and in our newsletter, if anybody would like, they could register for the flyers and the stickers. And we mailed out about 250 voter packs. And so it had all the dates in there, along with the flyers, the QR codes, and then all the stickers. And we mailed those across the state. Next slide. And Meredith, there's the bookmark to the left. So you can see that same thing, the design with all the dates. And then there's another shot of the different stickers. Next slide. And then I know that Chelsea mentioned the vice president's tweet. So this was a copy of it. And then we were also featured in the National Public Radio article. So Jimena was out here and actually did an interview with our CEO, and then came into our Read It and Eat class and talked to the families about voter registration. And then they are going to be following us for the entire election cycle this year. So we've had one interview that came out January 11th. And that was their shot from their story of the stickers. So next slide. And then we do put items in our newsletter. So you can see our newsletter goes out to 26,000 a month. And then we do include voter registration, civic engagement information in each newsletter. The photo in that newsletter was when we announced the NVRA at our open house. And IHS was here, the Secretary of State, and a lot of other dignitaries were here as well. Next slide. We also have a radio show called Native Talk Arizona. It is on FM and it is on Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube. And then we do have voter registration topics and different things like that. And then this was just a shot of a couple weeks ago when we had Janie Parrish on, and she's the director of the Arizona Native Vote. So, and then social media. So we're about 24,500 on Facebook, Instagram, 6,300. We do post a lot. And then these are just a couple screenshots of things that we've done recently in terms of our voter reg. And then these just have some of the metrics that we've done and the reach that we got. So the reach on the top left post, it's about 2,800, it looks like. And then on the bottom, you can see that as well. And then that's my contact information. So thank you for listening and your interest.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was great. I'm really happy to see all the cool, unique ideas you guys have come up with, and then to learn more about how the NVRA designation process has been going. And so now we have some time set aside. If anybody has any questions or comments, you can come off mute and ask, or you can place them in the chat box.
I just also wanted to inform everybody, like with our 2 videos that we actually have 2 more videos in the works. And so if you follow our social media, you'll be able to see those coming out as well.
Did you see in the chat from Laura to tie in the 100 Years of Citizenship Act? Candace, go ahead and you can go off mute and ask a question.
Hi, Chelsea. Thank you. Good to see everybody. I was curious, a lot of prior Native vote efforts that I've been around have been very, they're tribally driven, they're tribally specific. So I was wondering if there's any unique considerations that either UIO presented takes into account when working in an urban environment. Is there more, do you have to take into special considerations to take a more sort of all tribes approach when working in an urban environment? Does that change the messaging at all that you use?
I can go ahead and answer that. I don't, in terms of messaging, yes. We also work with the Arizona Native Vote there's like a comms meeting that we have every other week with Intertribal Council of Arizona leading that. And there's about 15 or 20 of us on the call. And then the Arizona Secretary of State also just started a Native Vote Hour that's every other week, I believe, as well. And we all get on there and bounce ideas around and talk about the challenges and if there's any issues with the Indian Law Project from ASU as well. And we want to make sure that we're doing anything in any of the challenges in terms of voting in Maricopa County, with any issues and addresses that, I don't know, Janice, if I'm explaining that well, but to make sure that everything is being taken into account and then that everything we're doing is correct. So.
Same for here. We service so many different tribes here in Utah, being not right there. Sorry. So we have to, I like to stick to facts and what is the correct procedures. I try not to do specifically tiered to one tribe, but then I also don't want to cross the line. I know there's a lot of different cultural aspects that go into creating different campaigns. And so I really try to use my knowledge, but then I have other people that I'm like, hey, can you check my work? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And so I try to not go over that line of misrepresentation, but then also stick to facts and including all tribes across the United States.
We also have a question in the chat from River. Could you briefly share your process for transforming ideas into reality, particularly focusing on how you gauge what resonates with Indian country?
I can kind of elaborate on that because it is a little bit, it is a hard question. But I guess what I was kind of wondering is if any of you have considered partnering with maybe influencers to maybe spread the message further beyond Indian country, and if that's something that you've maybe considered and found worth it or not.
So we did hire some last election cycle. Some of the videos and some of the things did pretty well. Not as well as I had hoped, but I'm going to go ahead and try it again this cycle and see how we do. And you never know what picks up. It's like some things that we think are going to do great are don't do well, and things that we're just like, maybe they have done fabulous. And I think that we all meet as a team, and some of our younger team members, they came up with the Taylor Swift, with the friendship bracelets. And they have really embraced this and they love doing it. They take it home, and those have proven to be super popular. So I think it's just involving a lot of our staff and community members and listening to what they think and trying it. I figure there's no fail, right? Can only get more registrations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say for the NUIFC, a couple of our organizations have worked with influencers, or I know one of our organizations in Oklahoma City, they made a PSA with cheese from Res Dogs, and that did really, really well. And so kind of doing that sort of work is something that our organizations, it's kind of up to them. I think Denver Indian Center also worked, I believe, with Liddy Waters, who was a basketball player on the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they have a relationship to him. And so those were very popular, but I think one of the big things for us is that we know that in-person interactions and in-person conversations are more effective than digital, or at least for us to the most part. I think digital is a really good way to reach people, a really good way to get people thinking about something. But as far as oh yeah, I was gonna say Laura Harris mentioned as well. In New Mexico, AIO did some really awesome social media stuff on TikTok. I think our organizations, I think what we've heard a lot is that to really get someone from interested in voting to being a committed voter, or for sure we're going to register to vote, that in-person interaction are really key. So we don't want to over leverage or really rely too much on digital outreach and digital stuff, but it's a great way to drum up support.
Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I just want to say thank you to everybody attending today, and thank you to all of the speakers for presenting and participating in this. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody was able to learn more about NUIFC and the work our UIOs are doing towards voter engagement. And yeah, just want to say thank you, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your work.